Yeah, I'm excited to do this because the course has been really helpful and everything like that. So I'm glad we could finally sit down because you know how when we first met through LinkedIn, you're like, hey, Chris, let's do a podcast. I was like, okay.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think so. I mean, what I love about podcasting or videos in YouTube or anywhere in platform is, I think so. I always tell people it's the best investment. It's just like a nice business because when I go to do a business, let's say I need to rent a space. Maybe you can do it from home. I want to sell something, so I'm going to buy something, but that probably I have to buy it and then I have to sell it, right? So I need to find a market. But when you do videos on YouTube or your podcasting, doesn't have a shelf life. So you make a video today, but maybe even put it this way. Let's say you make a video that is not popular. It doesn't really matter. For example, there's a guy who was doing reviews of cars of the 80s. Okay. So he would take a car of the 80s and make a review with his cell phone. No, not really very popular. But then he was continuing this. 2-3 years later, those cars become very popular. And he found his niche. His niche found him, pretty much. Now this guy have over a million subscribers.
Yeah.
And he's making a lot of money. So the beauty is that you might have a video today that makes no views.
Yeah.
But the video is still on the cloud. And then someone will find the video, will like it, and because you like a video, it shares to your network that you like a video. That network will start looking at video and start liking it. And a video you make 2-3 years ago become very popular, even very popular, and you start making money from something you did 3 years ago.
Yeah. And you have no idea how that stuff is going to happen, how it's going to come about.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes down to just doing it and staying consistent with it.
So you see, I used to do taxes, for entrepreneurs, or for people. And sometimes people will come to me and said, you got to pay taxes. And I said, well, what you could do is, why don't you start a business? It's like, I don't know what to start a business, because sometimes you're an employee, starting a business might be conflict of interest, right? Some people doesn't feel. I said, look, what do you like to do? So again, when people said, I like gardening, perfect. Why don't you just, every time you go gardening, buy a camera and then start filming yourself and just talk about what you do. And it's very simple. You start a single LLC, very, very simple. Not with members, just you, because anybody can do it. It's a pass-through corporation. So single LLC, make videos, put them on YouTube, and eventually you'll get 1,000 subscribers or members, right? Or followers, and then you will be able to make money. Now, that might take 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Well, everything that is related to the business now is tax deductible. And you can pass all those expenses back into your personal taxes and you reduce taxes. But you're doing something you already doing it. It's so simple. Some people will do it, some people won't, but it doesn't mean that it's not there to be able to do it.
Yeah. Well, and if you can ultimately turn it into a business and you like it and something comes of it, that's special too.
For example, I had a friend of mine. He's Cuban. And, in the pandemic, he wasn't doing so well his business. So he started a podcast. Well, not podcast, but like a YouTube channel. And he started talking, of course, politics, bad about Cuba, and only about Cuba. This guy, by the end of 6 months, he was making $20,000 from just a YouTube. Now, of course, become a professional. So now he's doing videos every day.
Sure.
And editing, all the work, and become a job kind of way, right? But he loved to do it. And he started only with the video. He didn't have to buy anything. He didn't buy a franchise. He just expressing his own knowledge about the politics about Cuba. He get a lot of Cuban. And so when you find niche, and this is the interesting thing about this, he thought about entering into politics about other countries like Venezuela or Colombia. And as soon as he did that, the audience grew, but the Cuban audience went down. And the Cuban audience were the actually who were paying for the subscription. So his money went down. So he realized that by focusing only on Cuba, very niche, even his audience was smaller, that audience was willing to pay more money.
Yeah.
So that shows you that sometimes you get, when you niche in a particular sector, you're going to get a higher. You're thinking you're not going to get that much money, but you're going to get more loyalty. So this is the key thing in all business. Where there's loyalty, there's money.
Interesting. Yeah, it makes sense, and it's easy to not follow that, right? It's easy to just chase this and that, and this opportunity came up, especially early on when you're in business.
Yeah.
When you're first starting out, you'll talk to anybody with, sometimes anybody with a pulse you'll talk to is just, this seems like a decent lead, and then you end up scattering. But I think it's almost one of those like necessary things at the beginning to go through that and hit those kind of walls, and then you figure out who you need to talk to.
You see, the most scary part of every entrepreneur is to find a niche.
Yeah.
Because when you enter into a forest and you see 5 birds, and you say, if I choose one bird, I'm going to lose the other 4. The problem is you have only one bullet. So you can't kill the 5 birds. You got to focus on one. So you're going to focus on the one that better fits you. So it might be the closest one, or it might be the one that is not working well. So it's going to be the easy one. But ultimately, you can look at the 5 birds all day long. You might want to have them all. But at the end, you have to shoot one.
Yeah.
Because if you try to shoot the 5 of them, you're not going to make it.
Yeah, you scatter it around.
So as you said, you have to go through the forest and you have to find the 5, and you will dream about it, but ultimately when you come to a niche, then that's where you're going to make most of the money.
Yeah.
I think so. What troubles a lot of people is the feeling of there's not enough, right? There's not enough money into this. You see, a lot of people said, it's an interesting story about this. There's a guy who is in a Rolls Royce, and the guy came in and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" "I clean bathrooms." So the guy quits his job, starts cleaning bathrooms. He hated it. Then he walked away, very sad because he's not driving a Rolls Royce. Then I asked another person, riding a Bentley, "What do you do?" "Oh, I do real estate." He quits his job, get into real estate, and start jumping. And so he's jumping all the time, but never see the end of the tunnel. He never really search for help. How do you make this money? What do you do? So I couldn't ask the person, "Well, I clean bathroom, but I don't clean them myself. I just find the companies that need the cleaning. I hire people." So if you get to know by the expert how he's doing it, then you can, instead of jumping right away in a business you have no experience with, but you just jump in because you're thinking people are making money there.
Yeah.
See, you can make money and become a millionaire in any business. You don't have to chase other people's business. You can do very unique in what you do. So this is where we believe there's abundance in very little. And so we're thinking there's lack in little, but there's abundance in little. Like Ford focus on, their cars, and they have their niche and they're still making money. Now Chevrolet comes along, Chrysler comes along, Toyota comes along, and they have the audience which are very loyal and keep buying those cars. They don't have to sell to everybody. They just have to sell to their niche.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is a good time to do an introduction for you. Gus, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. Maybe if you can explain kind of who you are and what you do with Thinking into Results, and then maybe we can dive back into this part that you just mentioned about finding help and finding experts who have done this before, because that's something that you and I have talked about in some of these coaching sessions. Is I was trying to figure certain things out, and I wasn't looking for that help. So if we can come back to that, but please, if you can tell everybody who you are, what you do, and then let's dive into some of this.
All right. So my name is Gustavo Romero. I'm a mindset coach. I've been a coach full-time since 2019, when just the pandemic started. And a little bit background of me, I'm a business engineer, and I have a MBA entrepreneurship. And I used to do classes for 2 universities about entrepreneurship. And I like all about entrepreneurship. So I started on those classes teaching kids between 19 and 20 years old how to develop an idea.
Okay.
Once they develop an idea, to start a business and to make money with that business. So it's all about pushing you. You see, when you're against the wall, you got 2 options. You can die or you can fight. And if you fight, you're always going to win. But you got to believe you can win, right? So mindset is like the words a lot of people said, mindset is where your mind is set on. Is your mindset on succeeding or is your mindset on not losing, right? So you want your mindset to be on succeeding. And for that require conscious awareness. So you have to be conscious to that. Because ultimately success is not a secret. But success is not natural. So you have to do things that are unnatural to be successful. If you follow the crowd, you're never going to be successful. You have to find what you're really passionate about it. So what I do and help with people is find that passion that they have, help them to focus on what they want, and focus on a goal. So ultimately, we always accomplish our goals, but we have to have a clear goal. And if you're not accomplishing something, it's because that's your goal.
Yeah, and that's been an interesting thing going through this whole process is what your mind is set on. And it's something now that you told me is like, tell as many people as you can about this. It'll help reinforce some of these things. But one of the things that when you and I first met, I would focus on a lot more is why can't things be done, or what you don't want to have happen, and you end up making that stuff happen because that's your focus, versus, hey, let me focus on the actual thing that I want to achieve, that I want to hit. Easier said than done, but it takes a lot of repetition also is what I'm really learning from this. But that was an interesting shift, and I do see it in some younger people that I talk to is there's a lot of like, well, I don't want this to happen. And it's like, well, okay, what do you want to happen? And that shift for me, it doesn't make everything perfect. It doesn't mean that life is all rainbows now, but it has actually drastically shifted my life in more of the direction that I want. And I'm starting to be able to look at things of, rather than, well, that won't work, and this is totally out of luck, all this stuff, to, okay, actually, I think I can make that work if I do this, if I do that. Who do I need to talk to? Who can help me? Who can guide me through? It's been really helpful in terms of changing my perspective on how I can actually get to what I want to do.
I will say a couple of things. So the first thing is that the reason that we have a tendency to negativity and we make big things that maybe don't happen is because we have a mind that's very prehistoric, right? So our mind is there to protect us, protect us of the unknown, right? Success is in the unknown. It's not in the known. So the known is safe. The unknown is success. But the mind, put it this way. Let's say you are in a cave and you got your kids and you got to find food because you're not going to die in that cave. So your mind would say, if you go outside of the cave, there's going to be an animal or something that's going to kill you. So I'd rather to keep you safe. So I'd rather you to die in the cave than die outside of the cave. And you get to that point to make that decision to battle against your own fears, face the fear, which is tend to disappear, go outside the cave, and you just realize there's no danger there, right? But it also prepares you to be cautious. So you might find a rock or you might find a stick and go outside slowly, but challenge yourself to see yourself outside of the cave. So we are always moving outside of a cave. We need to understand that our mind, what we call our paradigms, is these ideas that we have in our mind that we have to remain safe, right? Most people live in a comfort zone, live in a cave. And to get out of the cave is the only way to progress. We do it gradually, but sometimes if you really want to get a great progress in your life, you got to face your fears, right?
So when you talk to people, like you're talking to people all the time that have something that they want to achieve, but they're stuck. Maybe they're afraid of it. What are some of the common ways that you see that fear manifest itself when you're talking to people? You're part of what you got to do initially to see if they're a good fit is find out what that fear is and why they don't want to do it. What are some of the common ways that you see people put fear in their own way?
So, for example, it's all about, for example, you ask them to make a decision that is not something that is expected. Then the paradigm immediately kicks in and said, no, I cannot do that. Or that's too expensive. Or I don't have the money. Or I don't have the time. Most of the time they do have the time. I would say they have the time. They have the money. You see, we always give money and time for what is important for us. Mm-hmm. But the paradigm is there to protect you. But it protects you by using your current circumstances, which is your fear or your lack of money or your lack of time or whatever that is new to keep you stuck, right? So unless you challenge that, and I always say to people, try to find out how can you do it, right? If you put the how, then your mind automatically will start expanding and try to find solutions, mm-hmm. right? If you say no, immediately will your paradigm take over and doesn't let you to grow. You see, we can be our own solutions or we can be our worst nightmare. It's all in us, ultimately. Yeah. But understand this too. Being negative, being positive is like a language. See, if you learn Spanish at school and you don't practice, you're going to lose it, right? Mm-hmm. So you are practicing every day to be negative and you're not being positive, so you lose to being positive. Now, if you start forcing yourself consciously to be positive, even that sometimes you don't feel positive, you feel more negative, but still forcing yourself to talk positive, mm-hmm. then you start losing the negative. And it will get to the point that you will never think negative, you will think positive. But it's same like a language. So that's just so important, the repetition that we've talked before. You have to repeat positive things, read positive, and be a lifetime student. See, when you're a lifetime student, you're always learning something new. If you're thinking that there's nothing you need to learn anymore, then you're screwed because life moves, but they don't wait.
No. Well, and so the positive reinforcement in the morning, this is something too we've talked about, and you told me some of the tricks that you do. But in the morning, what I've started doing lately is while I'm still kind of groggy, still waking up, I'll just keep saying that stuff like, you're going to sell, you're going to do all these things, you're going to make this happen, blah, blah, blah. And it's not even necessarily that you believe it at that time in the morning. You're just, sometimes you got to say it and keep doing that. And what I've noticed lately as I've been doing that more, by the time my conscious mind kicks in and you wake up, it's just starting me that much further ahead in the day versus where you would have those negative thoughts and then it spirals while you're still waking up. That's on your subconscious mind. And then your waking mind kind of kicks in and that's what it's starting on top of. Versus now when I put that stuff in the morning, those positive thoughts, I'm starting that much further ahead. You have that much more willpower. You have that much more umph. You have that much more like desire to find a solution to what the problem is versus right off the beginning just being like, well, I'm sunk. Like I'm not going to be able to do it, and then everything else is kind of negative from there. Like so. How long have you been practicing this stuff?
So I started coaching when I was in the university to kids, to start the business in 2011.
Okay.
And from there, I've always been like a serial entrepreneur, so always starting businesses, selling businesses. I did consultancy. So there's a difference between consultancy and coaching. And actually, I have a friend of mine said, you should do consulting and not coaching. Now, the difference is the consultancy, the client need to make a decision, but he's not in a position to make that decision. So he hired a consultant to make the decision for them about something specific, right?
Okay.
And sometimes the consultant doesn't even know what he's doing, right? But you trust that he knows what he's doing. You see, it's very interesting. They went to a Boston Consulting and they asked, the consultants, and you can see on YouTube this interview, they asked the client, what do they do? And they said, I don't know, it's complicated. And they asked the consultant in Boston Consulting, what do you do? It's complicated. So it's complicated because no one really knows what they're doing, right? There's a lot of, I think so in the 90s, there was a lot of consultants that were coming with this re-engineering. Re-engineering of the business was pretty much, if the business is not working, the problem is with the people. And so you got to fire a lot of people and bring new people and kind of re-engineer your business. Mm-hmm. Now, what the difference in consulting and coaching is that the coaching, notice that the problem comes from management. But it's not about firing management, it's management realizing that their limited beliefs doesn't give them the confidence to make the decisions. In true, no company needs a consultant. Specifically, if you have if you're integrating SaaS in your business, you need a consultant very specific for the integration of the software into your business, right?
Yep.
But a consultant to make a decision, most probably you know what you need to do. It's just you're not mentally prepared to make that decision, so you're giving that to someone else, right?
Okay.
In the coaching, we prepare you to be prepared to make that decision. Because at the end of the day, you're the best person to make that decision. You know what you need to do, you're not mentally prepared to do it. In coaching, we prepare you. But this is the thing. People are willing to pay for someone else to make a decision, more money than telling them that they are wrong and they need to change. So people don't like to change unless they're forced to change or they're willing to change. But most people in upper management, they rather hire someone who might know what they're doing, they might or might not, make the decision, and if it was a bad decision, then blame the consultants. But if they make the bad decision, they have no one to blame but themselves. You see, so that changes a little bit. So at the end of the day, you want to be coached, you want to be confident of making the decision. Now, we talked that before, and it happened many times. Sometimes you're afraid that you don't have the resources if you make that decision. But the key thing, when you made the decision, everything is attracted for that decision to fulfill successfully. It's the fear in between. So remember when we talk about in the terror barrier, that you have to make a decision and the terror barrier comes in and you just have to make the decision, stick to it, and everything seems to be coming in place.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so then the terror barrier has been a very helpful concept to learn about. So you've been doing this and teaching some of this since 2011. A lot of these ideas are based on that are in this course are around Think and Grow Rich, and then funny enough, I saw a YouTube video of Earl Nightingale, him talking about the strangest secret of success, and there's an animation thing to it, but it talks about a lot of this stuff. When did you first come across these kinds of ideas about how that you can actually change your mind? Because for a long time, I didn't know that any of this stuff was there, and I wrote off mindset coaching and all these things. Like I thought that a lot of it was like nonsense, just being honest. And it wasn't until I kind of came across these ideas positioned this way that have actually helped and flipped my idea about it. When did you first come across these kinds of concepts?
So when I started coaching people in the university, I came to them. Imagine that you go to college, right? Mm-hmm. And you have a scholarship, and it's all paid. So if you fail a class, you lose your scholarship. And so when I was there, I said, this is going to be a special class for you guys. You're going to learn how to make money with an idea that you have, right? Okay. But if you don't make the money, you don't pass the class. And a lot of people get scared because they're very good at studying, they're not very good at doing things, right? So you have to put them pressure. When I did that, I noticed that everybody passed, but they put everything they could. They couldn't think to fail because failing wasn't an option. They have to win. So that caught a lot of my attention. But I wasn't 100% knowing that why that was happening.
You were just kind of picking up on something.
So I was just pushing. I was trying to be, because I always doing business, I know that if you can't make bread by reading books. You gotta get dirty, right? And you gotta make mistakes. And I wanted them to make mistakes because mistakes is the only way we learn, right? But because we learn of our mistakes, then we learn something, we apply it, and we get successful in that. In 2018, I did a coaching. A neighbor of my home was a coach, and he invited me to do a coaching. It's called Thinking into Results with Bob Proctor. Right?
Yeah.
So I started as a client. And when I started going through the program about the mind, about everything started making a lot of sense, everything I was applying with those kids. Now, I read a lot of books about personal development, but it wasn't really an explanation. And I'm an engineer, so I need to make sure that everything fits like in a box.
Yeah,
right?
you need, it needs to work, it needs to do this.
And it needs to make sense. 2 + 2 is 4, right? And so when I did that coaching, everything clicked. And when I finished the coaching, I said, I need to do this. So I enrolled with them. They sell like a franchise, right? So I paid the fee to become a coach with them. I certified with them, and I started sharing with this way because it was the orderly way. Now, I'm very pragmatic in what I explain, and I can explain things multiple times, which some people appreciate, some people maybe not.
Sure.
You see? But the whole idea is to understand that everything that we're teaching you, you're already doing it. You're not aware because you've been doing this so many times that you think it's just natural part of you, but you learn it like that. You see?
Okay, so that makes sense because even it's like you're already doing it, but you're doing the behavior. You're thinking of the things that are getting you that result. Like you're already part of this mechanism of how it works. Now it's just here's how you can look at it, understand the mechanism of it, and then make the changes so you can actually go where you want to go.
Right. So for example, the difference between a baby walking, right? He see you walking. He wants to do what you do, and his goal is just to walk. And the baby try to walk and fails, and fall down and all that. But his goal is to walk. He just want to do what you do. So he keep on trying. When we learn a language, it's the same thing. When you learn Spanish or English, you have no idea what you're doing. You're just repeating the words, and you're repeating and repeating and repeating. But this is what happened. You keep repeating because inside of you, you know that eventually you'll get it. But out of magic, it doesn't happen immediately. Some people learn it super fast in 6 months. Some people take a year. But it always happens like this. One day, they talk to you and you start understanding. Yesterday, you didn't understand anything they were saying to you. Today, you understand everything. Yeah. You see, so it's something when your subconscious mind, and we said like this, subconscious mind accept the idea that you speak that language, it will use everything that is stored in your conscious mind for you to be able to understand and express yourself, right? So, but this is the key thing, as I was saying, thinking positive is not good enough. You can read positive, you can listen positive, you can think positive, but if you don't speak positive, you won't really incorporate in you. The reason I say this, thinking positive, this coaching, a lot of people do the coaching. For example, one of the things I told you when we did the coaching together, find someone that you can share what you're learning, right? The reason of that is because when you consider this like a language, the last thing you being able to make good or the way you learn is to speak. The reason they're speaking is because you need to understand what you're saying, right? So you're not going to go and say hello to someone if you don't know what hello means. You need to understand it behind. But when you use the word, then it becomes part of you. Is very common. So when you are learning in any coaching, if you share it to other people, then you incorporate it as part of your life, that thinking, and it become part of you.
Well, and you start to understand it better, because when you can, times when some of these things have sunk in the most is when I go to explain it to, it's usually a younger person. That's just how it seems to go. But talking to them, and you listen to what they're saying, like, hey, have you ever thought about this? You know, all these things you're saying, you can actually achieve these, but everything that you're telling me right now is you're just saying how you can't do it. You're like thought of doing it this way, talk about what you can actually do and try to reset it this way. And a lot of times it's people they're not even aware that they're doing it. I wasn't fully aware. I kind of knew, but I wasn't able to fully see that was what was, I don't know, leading to a lot of like the limitations and things like that.
You know, what happened, a lot of people say, that's the way I am.
Yeah.
That's the way I am. And the truth is that that's not the way you are. It's the way you were created to be. So I'll put it this way. This paradigm or these ideas, you were not born with that. I'll put it this way. You're from the U.S., right?
Yep.
If I take you when you were born, I take you to China, you will learn Chinese. Even though you're American, you'll learn Chinese.
Sure.
You probably will believe you are Chinese. And you probably don't even speak English. And so they show you that you are born perfect, but you become imperfect because things that you learned are not perfect. You see, all these ideas that money doesn't grow on trees, or you can't do that, or don't talk to strangers. I see a lot of salespeople, they want to sell, they don't sell, and because all their life they told them, don't talk to strangers. And if you don't talk to strangers, you don't sell anything.
Nope.
Right?
Yeah.
So you got to understand that all these ideas that you have, all these limitations that you think that are yours, they're not yours. They've been given to you by other people. And normally it works this way. And I explained this before. We are set up to trust. We have to trust. You see, when we are born, we spend the first 2-3 years. If we don't trust in our parents, we die. You see, an animal in 2 weeks is ready to go. We are not. Mm-hmm. We gotta trust. So we set up in our mind to trust. So we trust people. And sometimes people repeat ideas that they listen from other people. They're not their ideas. They listen from other people and they tell you. And sometimes someone repeat all day long, we don't have enough money. We don't have enough money. Money is not here, or the economy is going to collapse, or the economy this, or the economy that. Then you adapt those ideas, incorporate part of your self-image, right? Mm-hmm. You believe in it, and because you believe it, then that things manifest in your life.
Yeah.
And you really think, this is just you. It's not you. It's someone else give you a program to live the way they think you should live. And you keep living their life till you realize that you have a choice. You see, you have a choice to believe that money grows on trees or not, right? Now, money could grow on trees. If you have an apple trees, maybe it's not money, but it's apples. And you can sell those apples and become money. You see, so it's up to you what you believe, but it's a choice. You were never given a choice because someone told you what you need to believe, and they condition you. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, they don't condition you. You condition yourself. You adopt those beliefs and condition yourself. So everything that is said not possible is being given to you. But if you were raised from a little, like the Chinese, you were raised little that you can achieve anything you want. Just try. You're going to make a mistake, but you're going to do great. And they give you 100% positivity, and you have a conversation. People when talk negative, you're like, why? I mean, what do you mean with that? What do you mean you cannot do it? You see, you wouldn't understand the negativity because you were raised very positive.
Sure.
It's like a language.
Yeah. And that repetition does sink in. It kind of becomes part of who you are. It's interesting sometimes too. And I'll go back and I'll think of things that I say or that I write down or anything. And sometimes I have to stop and go like, where did that thought come from? Is that my idea? did I come up with that, or did I just take that from somebody else? And now I'm incorporating this negative, or doesn't even have to be a negative or positive idea. It can just be something else. It's kind of amazing how fast that stuff can slip in and then just becomes part of how you think. Like, that's just how it is. That's just how it is.
I'll share something with you. And it could be very little thing. I was probably 6 years old. I was on a table with my parents and all that. And my dad came home. And my mother has salad. And my dad said, "Where's the meat? I'm not a horse. I can't eat grass all day." Right? And that single idea, I never forgot about that idea. And so every time I go and eat salad, I'm thinking, I'm not a horse. Why would I be eating salad? Now, salad is good for you, right? But that idea will always pop up. So remember, all those limitations, all those things that contradicts or what you want. You see, paradigm, like I said again, is like a con man, right? Those limited beliefs is like a con man. You use your fears and your current circumstances, which are, ideas that you adopted from other people, to always keep you stuck. And the only way to move forward is you have to get the confidence. You can get your confidence on your own, but it might take time. But if you have an expert, someone who studied this, who has devoted his life to study and know this, can help you to shorter the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and that was going back to what we started this about, was the expert thing. That was a big part of what I got hung up on a decent amount. Was, as you go through this, one of the big pieces is talk to experts, talk to people who have done this before, talk to people who have figured out what you're trying to figure out, and use their experience, use their expertise as a leverage to move forward. I think it's another part of fear. Or have you ever heard of the concept of resistance? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
It's so basically, for people who don't know, it's there's a guy, Stephen Pressfield. He wrote a book called The War of Art, and it's basically talking about this force. He calls it resistance. He views it as like an external force that's constantly gets in. It's that self-sabotage. It's like all these things that kind of prevent you from doing your work. It talks about how you have to get over that. And one of the pieces that would constantly come up as I was trying to build that last business and do these things was, well, don't talk to experts, because then maybe they'll think that you don't know what you're doing, or this, or maybe then people will think that the business isn't doing well. Don't talk to them. They have a different business model. What if they're competition? Like, all of these ideas that can come up and be fear, you push that in front of yourself and then you don't do it. But as soon as I started opening up and asking for advice, I was like, all right, that's the direction I want to go. You and I happened to have a conversation later that day, and you're like, hey, did you know that my family ran a radio station? I was like, no, I didn't know that. And you're like, here's how the business model works. Here's how the ad revenue works. Here's how all these things work. It's like, interesting. Okay. So that gave me this initial piece of, I set my kind of focus where I was going, and then you and I talked. That came about. That gave me a bunch of other ideas for talking to X, Y, and Z person. That opened other opportunities. So it really is the best way I can put it for somebody who doesn't think that it works this way, because I was super skeptical, is if you drive around every day, you can drive home and not even notice the cars around you. It's just whatever. But then as soon as your lease is coming up or it's time to buy a new car, suddenly you see all these cars that are out there on the road. Like, oh, I noticed this. I see this car everywhere now. Yeah. It's only because now you're focusing on it. It's in your purview. You're looking at it. It's kind of been the same thing for me with goals and stuff like that. Until you set it and you actually want to go that direction and say, like, I'm going there, you don't see all of these solutions and these pathways forward. That was one of the biggest shifts. And the expertise thing, bringing in that expertise, it solved a bunch of those puzzles. It's the knowing doing gap. Like, I know this is where I want to go. How the hell do I get there? Now I can start talking to these people, and they start putting the the pieces together for you almost.
So, like I said again, if you are a lifetime student, then you know that you don't know.
Yeah.
And you know that you need to learn from someone who knows. So what I explain to people is that, let's say you make $100,000 a year and you want to make $500,000. You can. The problem is that you don't know how to make 500. Now, if other people make $500,000 a year, you can make it too if you know how to do it.
Sure.
So the problem is that when you don't seek help to learn, you get stuck in 100,000 thinking that is who you are. But you are not that. You are what you think you are. If you think you're more, you're more. If you think you're less, you're less. So I explain to people that millionaires don't become millionaires because they have $1 million. Millionaires become a millionaire first, and they attract the million. Because money doesn't make people. People makes money.
So how do you convey that to somebody who's super skeptical of that idea? Because I was, and I wouldn't have thought this is possible. Like, how do you like convey that to somebody who's...
So it's a process. So for example, you being able to accomplish great things because you believe it's possible, right? But that belief could be shadow because repetition. So we can start from the beginning. You can be in bed. You wake up, open your eyes. In your mind, you're gonna see already what kind of shirt you're going to use, what kind of pants you're going to use. You're creating in your imagination what's gonna happen in the next 20 minutes. Let's say you're gonna take a shower. You see yourself, if you feel very slow, open the water, waiting, where the shampoo, where I put the razor. You're creating in your mind something you're going to do. But that creation happened because you have confidence that's going to happen that way. So, like I said, in coaching, we're just showing you something you do every day, but you are not aware you're doing it because you're repeating it all the time. So when you make aware yourself why you do things, why things happen this day, you become conscious aware of that, then what if I shifted a little bit? See, you don't have to make $1 million tomorrow, but if you make $1 extra today and then another $1 extra the next day, then you understand the mechanics that everything that happened is because you caused it in your mind. And then ultimately you're going to get to the $1 million.
Yeah.
It's just a game. It's like playing a game or a video game. There's rules. And when you learn the rules and you know how, you see, a lot of people, do video games, right?
Sure.
I have the boyfriend of my daughter, right? He plays Fortnite. Okay. And he was telling to my son, how do I do this? How do I do that? Because the joystick was different. He used to play a lot before. And so he said, well, this button do this. And he learned how the joystick was doing. And he was amazing. I mean, I was like, wow, keep going. It's like a little movie, right?
Yeah.
When someone play very good, it's like a little movie. So he learned it, but he had the knowledge before. He just need to adapt himself to that knowledge. But he have to learn, right? If he was in a position to like, I know how to do it, and probably he was very good at the game, but he didn't know how to use a joystick. You see, it's so little things that you need to just shift in your mind, correct in your mind, that you can use all the experience you had before and reapply it in something you never done before.
Well, and it makes a big difference. And it also, you do have to be willing to be a little humble about it too and realize you don't know everything. I had a moment like that here with the sales manager here where we were sitting there having a sales meeting. She was just ended up calling one of the customers I had, talked to him, totally confident. Hey, here's what we want to do, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you good with that? Good. All right, awesome. We'll send over the contract. And that was it. And before that, I was thinking like, I'm not sure how I'm going to approach this, blah, blah, blah. What should I do? I might be bothering them, things like that. And I had a moment where you could sit there and go like, how dare she do that? And I just had a moment of like, hey, how did you just do that? What were you thinking before you called? What was your goal before you called? How did you know what you were going to say? Why did you do that? Like, walk me through that. Because like we were talking about, you find somebody who's good at this. She used to sell at the last company we were at, like hundreds of thousands of dollars each month in stuff. She was the top salesperson. And that was one of those moments where I had an opportunity to learn, and you got to put your ego aside a little bit and be like, maybe I don't know the best way to do this. And by doing that and asking it honestly and not in a way of like trying to trap or take, just I want to learn, it gave me a valuable insight into something that had been blocking me for a while. It had been blocking me before you make a sales call that I'm going to be bothering these people. I'm not sure. And so when you call, you bother the people because I'm really worried about bothering them. And then you would call, hello, can I maybe talk to this person? They're like, get the hell out of here. I don't want to talk to you. And flipping it to, yes, I'm going to be interrupting them for sure. You almost can't call somebody without interrupting them.
Yeah.
But I've got something that's going to be helpful. It will solve a big problem that they have. I need to talk to them, so I need to help them. And that was a big turning point for me. Ends up being one of those things I say in the morning, you put in the subconscious mind. But it's funny how when you ask an expert on what to do in that situation, you get practical knowledge. And if you take it and you start incorporating it, it does make a big impact. And as soon as she came on and we had that, like the follow-up calls that I had after that, like, the pipeline is now building, and it's building twice as fast as it was before. And it's very cool to get that expertise, incorporate it in, use it yourself. And it just, I don't know, it's almost amazing to see the changes. You just don't even think it can happen. Or you think it can happen, but you're like, oh, whatever, maybe it'll happen. And then it does. And you're like, damn, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
For example, when I told a lot of different salespeople, I said, let's put a scenario that you have a salesperson A, salesperson B. And we're going to put a restriction that in one day, you can only call 10 people, right? Salesperson A called 10 people and closed 9 clients. Salesperson B calls 10 people and closed 1 client. So you cannot work harder. So a lot of people will justify, I just need to work harder because the sales goal is, let's say, 9 people. So the person A called 10 and closed 9, and they have to call 90 people to close 9, right? Mm-hmm. So working hard is not an option. And so we always said in business, and I think so came, I think so in the 90s also came, that people being smarter than working harder, working smarter and harder. Well, smart comes from your mind. Mm-hmm. You gotta work harder in your mind than just calling people. What you learn is that, for example, maybe you have to call 90 people to get those 9 sales. Well, she only need to call 10 people to get 9 sales because in her mind, she was like, yeah, I'm going to interrupt him, but I know I can solve a problem.
Yeah.
You see, what we need to understand is this, and in all people, is that we all salesperson. Everybody sells. The secretary sells. The client, the guy who cleans the bathroom sells. Everybody sells. Even our kids sells to us, and we sell to them. So we always in sales. But what is sales ultimately? How do you earn a benefit, right? How a reward? Also, it could be money, could be love, could be anything. Is ultimately we want to help people to get what they want, right? Like I said to you, you don't have to think in competition. There's always opportunities because an opportunity is the solution of a problem. If someone has a problem, there you are. You have an opportunity to solve someone's problem. What it means that you're helping them to get what they want. So if you want to make more money, we'll find more people that have the same problem and go and help them. Or find, like I said to a client the other day, said, well, I wanna get to $1 million. Well, find people have $1 million problem. And then you're gonna solve someone $1 million problem. He might be willing to pay you, for solving that problem. When you find he pay you $100,000 for solving $1 million problem, you just need 10 people that have the same problem. You make $1 million. It's about helping other people to get what they want. So you're married, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your wife, why she love you?
I give her what she wants.
And why you love her?
She gives me what I want.
Exactly. You see, so as long as we give helping the other person to get what they want, we're going to get a reward out of that. I talk to thousands of people in business, and they have, I am honest. There's people that are not honest and sell more than you. Well, I have a good product. Everybody has a good product. I am. So they're always trying to justify, which is so simple. You're always going to be rewarded for how many people you help. McDonald's give food, but it's not the burger. A lot of people say we can make better burger than McDonald's, but they're solving a bigger problem than you. It's not about the flavor of the burger. It's about the convenience, because it's a problem. I need to eat fast. I need to keep working. So it's all about helping people. But to get to that point is to be humble, to understand that in sales or in business, it's not about us. It's about other person. And so if it's about the other person, then why you make yourself so important? Make sure the other person is important. And when the other person is important, it's you simply to find out what do they want. Just ask them, what do you want? They'll tell you what they want. And then you help them and to do that.
Also from that side, when you find out what people want, if you can't help them, what's the approach there?
You can always help them. So maybe you can help them directly. But if you're constantly learning and networking, everything we want in life will come from other people, come from men. We cannot be isolated in an island.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone, let's say you sell software for the boating, right? And you might find someone who does software for the trucking business. Well, it's not your business, but you get to know the person, and maybe you one day made a tracker, that have a lot of tracks, and say, well, do you do software? So I don't, but I will give you this person who does, and you just pass it. You're just helping someone. You see, the difference is that he didn't give you any money because he doesn't have a boat business. He has a trucking business, but you help him. And you become a resourceful person to other people.
Yeah.
However, you never know where you see, the law of cause and effect says that whatever we put out, we always get back. So if you put good, you're going to receive good. If you put bad, you're going to receive bad.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put good and you help that person, you never know. The person might know someone who knows boat, or maybe his brother do boats. And said, hey, I just met this guy who helped me with this. Why don't you? And he hooked you up with that. He didn't have the business directly. So I always tell the story about this. There was a person that I met. He was an accountant, and he moved from out of state to Florida. And he was looking for a job as an accountant, but he couldn't find a job. So he was in different interviews, and one day it was raining, and it was someone on the middle of the road. So he stopped, has a flat tire, and he said, I have nothing to lose here. So he went out the window, and there was an old lady there, and he said, may I help you? And he said, yeah, that would be great. So he actually changed the tire.
Okay.
Right? He didn't need to change the tire. You don't find that kindness very long here, someone park in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
You just pass by, right?
Yeah.
The guy said, I got nothing to lose. So he changed the tire. The lady was inside, and the lady said, I want to thank you. I have no way to help you right now, but if can I have, your business card or something like that? Maybe I can, help you another way. And the guy said, well, I don't have my business card, but I'll give you my phone if you need anything. So the guy left, the lady left in his car, the guy was all wet, got in the car and left. The next day, someone called him and said, hey, you know what? You helped my mother for this. And I want to know, and she told me that you were an accountant. He told me your story. I have an accounting firm and we're looking for someone. Will you be interested to come here? And then they talk and he got a job. He got a job as an accountant with a good firm by helping someone to get what they wanted. So see, life is always balanced. So see, if you give good, you're always going to get good. So what we need to do is just be more kind to other people. Now, we might not get it from that person. He didn't get it from that lady, but she shared her experience with his son. I was in the middle of the road, had a flat tire. This guy showed up, got all wet, helped me out. There's anything you can do for him? Yeah. And they talk and he got a job. So the kindness that you give to other people will always be rewarded back. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come from the same person.
Sure.
But life will always balance itself.
Funny how that works, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And it happens all the time. We're just not always aware. We say like, oh, well, we don't know what is coming. So the good sometimes is coming to you is probably because you give good to someone. It's just you're not aware of that.
Yeah, it's hard to you can lose sight of that when things aren't going well. That's an interesting part about the course too, is it does talk. This is one of the things that you and I talk about a decent amount, is not letting outside circumstances dictate too much how you think, how you feel about these things. It's easier said than done, and it seems like it's easier over time as you practice it more. I never really understood what it meant, and I'm starting to. But if things aren't going well outside, you can, like in that case, like that guy was in kind of a rough spot trying to find a job. It's not always easy. You're always wondering, like, all right, am I going to find this? Am I going to run out of money beforehand? It's pretty easy to just be like, nah, screw you, lady. Like, I'm looking for something. Good luck. And then if you can avoid falling into those pits while even you're not in a good spot, it does end up coming back to help you. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Kindness will always triumph in life.
Yeah.
The more kind you are, you always find, but you have to be kind from heart, not just not trade. So he wasn't trading, he just helped. But life always balanced. So knowing that when you're kind, the kindness will always be paid back. Might not now, but eventually will, because life is always in balance.
And it's hard, and it can be hard to practice that too, especially when somebody is like not out for your best interest, or they're coming after you, or they want to sue you, or they want to, I don't know, people get these vendettas against you, and it's real easy to fall into that petty like, well, I'm going to get them back and I'm going to do this stuff. And it's kind of a waste of time and effort. It takes you off of anything that you actually want to do. You start just responding to that.
But it's an idea that was learned. You see, it's a fear that was given to you by someone else. Someone else said, hey, you know what? I met this guy and he got a lawsuit by podcasting. The guy, say something, he thought it was going to be edited and it wasn't edited, and went live, and the guy, put a lawsuit.
Yeah.
And you now are afraid. If you accept that idea, that might happen.
Sure.
That might never happen if you never hear that idea.
But you can put that as a fear in front of yourself.
But you have a choice. You see, the conscious mind, we have a conscious and a subconscious mind, right? Mm-hmm. The conscious mind has the ability to accept or reject. You have a choice. Someone said, yeah, but, probably that person is a negative person. I'm not a negative. I don't accept that idea. And you just reject it. You don't let it influence you. Because remember, all that we have in our life is simply the manifestation of a dominating thought in our mind of the past. See, the past determines the present, but the future is not determined by the past. The future is only determined by the present. So you have a choice today. I mean, people are hearing this podcast. You have a choice. They have a choice today to change. And if they change their thinking today, tomorrow, it's going to be different. It's going to get better. But if they persistently think in the same way that the past, the future is guaranteed be the same like the past. So we have a choice to change today. Now, I will say this, it's all on momentum, right? Mm-hmm. So some people don't have the experience, but I grew up in Latin America, so I had this experience. Sometimes your car broke down, right? And you got to push it to the gas station, right? So if you push it to the gas station, the first effort is about 80 to 100% of your strength. But when the car builds momentum, right? Build momentum, you just have to put a little bit of effort into it. But the car is moving based on its own weight, mm-hmm. right? So it's the same that habit to us. If we think in a certain way, we build the momentum. When we shift the thinking, there's a momentum coming. So we have two ways: stop the car or redirect the direction of the car. Use the same momentum to go, and then direct in a different direction and put effort into it. So if you're thinking negative and negative things happen into your life, if you shift it to positive, it doesn't mean immediately the positive is going to be, but it's going to slow down the negative and gradually start going the positive one. Mm-hmm. So that's why, and then when you build that positive, it will remain positive. The negative sometimes will come because we have this, prehistoric mind that wants to try to protect us. But if we dismiss that thinking and say, nope, I'm not going to think that way, I'm going to think positive, then you persist with that thinking, then your future is going to change. And this is how you can find people that sometimes, many self-millionaires that, they were adopted, or they grew up, in poverty, and then 2 or 3 years later, they become a millionaire because they were able to shift in their mind very quickly. It's not about being lucky. It's about working in your mind harder. It's just not allowing the fear, not allowing the procrastination, not allowing the negativity to root and find control on you. But you consciously change that, thinking positive, believing, have hope, have faith that things are going to get better, and then things get better.
Yeah. Well, and how does that work for you? Have you always thought positively, or is this something that you've had to learn over time?
No, I learned it. I mean, we are also, my father used to say, money doesn't grow on trees, right? And see, we all are the same. We all grow up in a negative environment. We all have a mind that is prehistoric. So regardless, fear is always going to be there. But you cannot let fear rule your life. We all change. But I think so the beautiful in where we talk is that to know that you have a choice. You don't have to keep thinking the same way. You have a choice to shift that. And we always do, and I'm not perfect. I mean, sometimes I think negative. Sometimes my son will say, Dad, you're so negative, right? And I'm like, oh, don't say that, right? But we all have our weaknesses, but as he said that, he's right. I was negative, and I have to change that, right? And I learned from my wife, and I learned from my kids, and I learned from every person I encounter. Sometimes people say, hey, I don't like the way you say that. It's like, well, I apologize, and then I reframe it, I say it differently, and I learn. That's why it's so important to be a lifelong learner. Mm-hmm. You never stop learning. You're always learning. Every day you're learning something new because it allows you to grow. You see, in nature, everything grows. You see, the plant growth, the tree, animals grow. Everything is growing, right? But animals are different because they're preset of who they are. We have the ability to create, but we also have the ability to choose. And we are the only one that can say, I don't want to grow. I want to stay like this. Well, you got that free will to choose. But nature is always growing. So if you're not growing, you're going backward. It doesn't work that way.
Well, what made you initially go down this path and actually like say, hey, okay, I get the coaching, I see where it's going, I'm going here. Like, did you have like recurring negative or limiting thoughts that were keeping you stuck somewhere that you were like, hey, I got to break this? So if whatever you're comfortable with sharing, but if you can kind of explain it, because I think it helps people understand if they know where you were at and what you were thinking, what you were trying to solve, kind of helps them see that it's possible to get to the other side.
So I'll share something with you. So in 2011, when I was doing classes, I had a business. It was doing good. I knew there were things that I could do, but I wasn't doing them.
Yeah.
So when I went to this kid and I said, hey, you're going to sell. If you don't sell, you're not making money. So one of the kids came to me and said, I want to appreciate what you told me. And I explained this. So this guy came in the week that we have this business. He said, we have the ability or the possibility to rent this space for $1,000. We know people in the area who are willing to consign their cars to us, and we can sell these cars on the weekend. But if we don't sell any car, we lose $1,000. And I said, okay. And what happened if you sell all the cars? Well, if we sell the car, we're gonna make like $20,000 in profit. But if we don't sell the car, we're gonna lose $1,000. So, well, if you lose $1,000, you're gonna learn something through the process. If you don't invest $1,000 and nothing happened, you're learning nothing. So whether you're winning 20,000, which is a winner, or you lose 1,000, you're still winning because you're learning something. But you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
You don't take that step, that action. They came back on Monday and they said, we sold all the car, we just made $20,000. I said, well, great. In 1 weekend, you just achieved the goal of the class. So that's great. I mean, you can do whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
And he came to me and said, I want to thank you for that advice. You support me when I was really need to make that decision. And I wasn't aware. He said, probably you're very successful. And I said, I'm not. Actually, I was probably the person who will not make the decision. You see, we learn from what we don't do, from the mistakes we do. I could have made that $20,000 myself in 1 weekend. But my paradigm, my fear took over and I didn't do it. And I learned something that moment that I could have learned something even if I make a mistake. So I learned it, I humbled myself. I knew that I did something wrong. In another business that I have, I should have taken action, but I didn't take action. And so I kind of told this kid, you got to do it. See, I didn't have the courage at that time to do it, but I want to encourage someone else to do it. Mm. And they did it and they win. You see, at the end of the day, we all human. We are not all perfect. You see, you find a teacher that, goes to class and he's just almighty and teach economy and all this kind of thing, and you put in a pedestal. Wow, this guy is amazing. But when you get to know them, their personal life, they're a mess.
Yeah.
Right? So no one is perfect. But it's good that we're not perfect because we can never put someone else on a pedestal. No one is perfect. But we can become perfect by being conscious aware that we can change things. We have that choice. And what's money at the end? You're going to make the money anyway. I mean, it's not like you're going to lose 1,000 and you're going to die. Yeah. No, it's not going to happen. You eventually get the money. If you go back in all those opportunities, all those decisions that you could have made, and you didn't make them, if you have made them and you make a mistake, you learn something. So you go into the stock market, you invest your money there, and you lose it. In there, you learn something. You lose the money. Fine, you lose the money. You're not gonna die for that. But you learn something.
Yeah.
But if you don't invest in the stock market, or you don't buy that business, or you don't make that decision, you lose so much because you didn't learn anything.
Yeah, you weren't in the game at all.
No. And so nothing really changes in your life. In other words, you're not growing. So growing is not about make more money. Growing is about you growing as a person. It's a journey what is fascinating, not the goal. You see, if you have a glass of water and you're really thirsty, what the decision to stretch your hands or the decision to go after the bottle of water, go out and talk to people and meeting people is a journey that takes you to the glass of water, which is fascinating and you learn it so much. Getting the glass of water makes you learn nothing. You see? So it's a journey. The journey is what makes the whole process, right? It's like I had a friend of mine who got pregnant. And she came to me one day and said, I wasn't ready to have a baby. But I'm so glad it takes 9 months to have a baby. Because the first month, I wasn't ready to be a mom. By the 9th month, I was excited to be a mom. There's a process in between that help you in that journey. Is not always going to be perfect. There's ups and downs. I mean, probably a lot of people know this. It just they're not accepting it. That ultimately success always is accomplished behind a failure. Mm-hmm. You have to fail a lot to be able to be successful. No one can start a business as, wow, he's successful, he's a millionaire. He went through that business for a lot of failure. He never shared it with you. You just see the nice car. You just see he's buying assets and all that. But when you were sleeping or watching Netflix, he was working. And he failed. And he stand up again and fail and stand up again over and over and over. Then finally, he figured out, it's not like he started a business and wow, he got the business. All the failure in the past, making the person to be able to recognize that opportunity and make the money. But he was able to become that person because of the failure in the back.
But if he never made those decisions to do anything, then you wouldn't have that.
No.
Is that something? So was that something that you realized when you were going through that process? Is you had this piece that you were struggling with, and you could give people advice on this, and you even saw that your advice and your recommendation literally led to $19,000 if they had to pay $1,000 for that. Like, that's a huge return, and that's good advice. Was that one of the first times where you kind of saw that outside of yourself? Like, you saw a real world example of that?
Exactly, because then you realize that you got nothing to lose. I mean, we have a business with a friend of mine back in Chile, and we were selling, some products, and he will open, 1 or 2 stores, once in a while. So like, let's get the car and let's go and do it. And the guy said, okay. And in one day, we opened 35 stores. Right? And by the end of the day, the guy said, I'm exhausted. I don't want to do this anymore. But this is the first time in my life I opened 35 stores in one day. I normally open 1 or 2 stores. You see, you just have to push yourself.
Yeah.
But I learned that after I did the classes. Because before I would probably just go to 1 or 2 stores. And they said, I got nothing to lose. I'm just going to go and do it. Do it as certain, you're certain that you're going to do it. That it's going to happen. Because the only thing that limited you to get you that success is your story in sales. You see, your story in sales, that you were afraid the person will be bothered. When you let go of that fear, now doubling your sales, you're making better because the fear is gone. Yeah. But you have to go through a period of failure, but you have to humble yourself to know that you didn't know it all.
Yeah, and that's sometimes a tough pill to swallow.
But remember that being courageous doesn't mean you're not afraid. It's that you're not letting that fear to control your life. You see, when you go in the army or you go into war, the coward is a person who let the fear control them. The brave doesn't mean he's not afraid, but it doesn't let fear control them. They go regardless of fear, they go. But because they survive, it's because they're conscious of making decisions that they have to do this. They have to live. They have to survive. They're more in their mind than the coward that is full in emotions. And the coward probably will die. And the other ones will survive. So that shows you all the time your mind is always trying to take control. Not your mind, but your subconscious mind always trying to be in control, and you have to control that.
But you need to know what's going on in there too. Like I talked to a guy. I've told this before, but I was speaking with a guy who was always struggling to make a certain amount of money. He was always hitting a limit. He went and did hypnotherapy, and they pulled up some stuff from his past, his subconscious mind, and his dad said something to him, to somebody else in a room over when he was 6, right around that age. That was hey, ever since he showed up as a baby, our business has been failing. But that business was a restaurant along one of those roads, so like a Route 66 type thing, where these thriving cities, and then once the interstate systems in the U.S. came into play, all these towns died out because they didn't have that rush of traffic anymore. So that kind of happened right around the same time this guy was born. And so the dad was almost blaming it on the son in this conversation. He internalized that and then brought that deep down into his subconscious mind and lived with that for 50 years or so. And then finally went to hypnotherapy, conjured this stuff up, realized that was a limiting thought, and then started working through it. And he's yeah, and this year I've made 3 times the amount of money that I've ever made before.
Yeah. Is that guilt? Right? Is it the idea?
Guilt's a tough one. It's heavy.
Oh, yeah. It is. For example, I had a client of mine, similar thing. His dad, used to travel a lot. And he never was around. And he missed his dad a lot. So he said, his dad chose to become a millionaire and travels a lot. Then his dad separated, and then remarried, and as he was abandoned, right? So he blamed the decision of his dad to choose money over the family or himself, right? And so as he grew up, he always worked in his mind, you can't have both. You can have a family and money. So this time, his guy's trying to make money, and he can't make money. He's saying, what the heck is going on? And keep going. Same thing. He went to a therapist. He knew this, but it wasn't aware of how to correlate this with his sales.
Yeah, and he didn't know that he wasn't aware that the one was impacting the other.
And so he removed that. He said, well, that was his dad's choice. And I can make money and be with my family at the same time. And now the guy's making the same thing, double his income in 1 year. So it's those little beliefs. You see, so the habit is not the doing. The doing is simply the manifestation of an idea. The habit is an idea in your mind. And that idea is negative. So, but it is not yours. You interpreted that is a feeling, and it's the feeling who's causing the action. So you just need to understand that everything is possible. In your life, everything is possible. You're not making it possible because those beliefs are conditioning you. But it's not your dad's fault, your mom's fault. It is your fault. You see, we live in a world that we are victims. But it's not our fault. The television treats us as a victim. The politics treat us as a victim. They're always blaming someone else for our problem, from being poor, or for being here, or from being there. There's always someone else's problem. And this is a victim society. I fall into the same thing. Sometimes we blame things. Why this happened to me, or we blame someone else. It's easy to blame someone else, but ultimately, the only one responsible of your results in life is you. Simply you. You make that decision. Oh, well, my dad never loved me. Or my dad this. Or my dad that. Well, it seems to be that dad's always more guilty than moms, right? So I'm a dad too. So, but ultimately, you make that choice.
Yeah.
And if you make yourself responsible, hey, you know what? I made that choice. This result is because I might have problems in the past, but I made that choice. It's my responsibility. Then free you.
Well, it gives you control back
Yeah.
over the direction of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's valuable.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And it's I don't know if I learned about it a while ago, but there's different it's funny how you see the same pattern pop up in different religions or psychologies or whatever it might be. But there's something called the internal locus of control versus the external locus of control. I don't remember if that's from like some religion or something. I remember learning about it in school. But when that concept was explained to me, I think it was in 7th grade or something. It was like either you can say things like you control everything or everything controls you. And there's valid arguments for both. I mean, you can really make a lot of valid arguments, and it's easier when you have like a good life to say that, hey, you have more control. And it's, sometimes easier if you've got a hard life to point at valid, legitimate things that do put pressures and can make your life suck. Like there's bad people out there doing bad things to good people all the time. But I always looked at that idea of, okay, I do have the ability to change this. Part of the flip side, though, with that I had to kind of get over with some of these things is if you take that on as well, but you run negativity through that engine versus the other engine, it's not a good fuel source for it because you can go the other way. So I would sometimes go too far the other way where it's like, yes, this is my fault and I should have been able to control it and I should have been able to do this.
Yeah, but for example, I would put it this way, and I think so. I explained this to someone. So coaching and psychology, they always work in a fine line, right? So what would I would say, I've been in both sides. I went to psychology when I was a kid. I had a depression one time, so I went to psychiatric. But I never used drugs in psychiatric. So I wanted to get out of my depression without drugs, which it takes longer, but make you understand more about you. I'm not saying you shouldn't take drugs. I mean, but it's a different. It's a choice,
sure.
Right? So I would say this: a lot in psychology is about how to make you happy today by handling things that happened in the past. So in other ways, maybe you're broken today because you never were able to handle things in the past. In coaching, we don't focus on the past. So we said you have a choice today. You can keep feeling a victim for what happened in the past. And if you do, I recommend you to go to psychology so he can help you to make peace with yourself of the past so you can be in peace today.
Okay.
But if you tell me, what do you want? Give me a goal. Tell me what you want in the future. Because ultimately, let's say, and I met different people, girls have been raped when they were 9 years old, right? They went through, sexual slavery, all these bad things happen, or, they moved from one country to another. They were smuggled from one country to another, right? And you can see so many bad things that happen to them, but they're able to, they're successful and they're starting a business so if they can do it, then you can do it too. It's just you don't know how to do it. How they were able to let go of the bad things in the past and be so successful in the future is because they focus on what they want. They don't focus on what happened to them in the past. You see, in coaching, we say that you're not broken. See, the ability of you today, knowing that you are responsible for your own results. You are responsible because you have a choice. We cannot change the past. But we do know that if you keep thinking in the past, the future is guaranteed to happen.
Yeah.
So if we do the shifting in the present, we can work for the future. And if we can work for the future and there's value on that future, why you wouldn't change the thinking? Why would you want to remain thinking of the past? But it normally happens because it's about, you see, when you're sick, don't tell anybody you're sick. If you have cancer, don't tell people you have cancer. Don't tell your friends you have cancer. Don't share it in the internet that you have cancer, because people will feel sad about you, so will bring bad energies. They might say, oh, I'm so sorry you are dying. And maybe you're deeply looking to feel, people tell you, I'm sorry you have cancer, try to be, you looking this victim feeling, right? While you don't tell anybody, and you're thinking, how are you doing? I'm doing amazing, I'm doing great. People say, oh, wow, that's great. I'm happy for you. They're giving you good vibration, you see? So a lot of people could influence you negative or positive, but you don't know that because you don't know these people. So sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's better to be alone because it's easy to turn being positive than being surrounded with people that are negative and try to be positive. You see, if people thinking, I'm sad because you're going to die, no one really recovered from this cancer, got my friend's going to die. What do they think? In other words, their words are conditioning you to die. You see, so what are you looking for there? You see, in the Bible said, if you are out there, right? I'm going to use it in the Bible. Said apart that if you said, hey, God here, and talk about all that in public, you are getting rewarded by what people say, oh my God, this is a godly person, and praise you. And the Bible said, if you're going to pray, go in private. Pray in private. And God knows that you're in private, and He will reward you for that. So ultimately, it's not about me. What is that God I want? I want the recognition of other people. I want to feel sorry about other people, or do I want to get better in my life?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and you have that choice. And you do kind of attract that to you. And I know you're talking about an example with cancer, but even just taking it back to something that's more day to day. Like if you feel a certain way, like if you have stuff going on at home and then you show up to work and you're all like pissed about it and everything, you bring that with you, and then people will kind of maybe try to avoid you or things like that, and then you can spin, you can get out of.
Well, attitude is contagious. If you have a good attitude and you're enthusiastic and you're happy and all that, people can feel that, and it's contagious. If you come with a bad mood, it's contagious too.
For sure.
I will say, and it happens to me in my life, if you surround with people that are very negative or kind of toxic or negative in your life is not going to get better. You sometimes have to make that hard decision to stay away from negative people. Negative people can influence very negative in your life. Sometimes we have family that are negative. So we need to understand, and that comes to us, is they have a paradigm, they have fears, they have doubts, but we cannot allow those fears or paradigms of them influence us. So we have that choice or reject or accept. So I tell the people, if you got family members that are saying things to you, just say to yourself, I don't trust this person because I don't think so he's in the right state of mind to give me the right advice.
Yeah.
I love this person, I care for this person, but I don't trust in what he's saying. Why the word trust? Because when we trust, our conscious mind goes away and our subconscious mind is wide open. And this is how people can influence in you. This is how when someone says something that hurts, it hurts because you trust them. But if you don't trust them, it cannot hurt. So it doesn't mean you don't love the person. It means at that moment you realize the person is not a good influence for you. It might be in the future, but at that time it's not. And so you need to protect yourself, because if you don't protect yourself and you get affected by that, it will really influence your life, your relationship with other people, your sales.
Yeah.
I got people that surround themselves. Sometimes you have salespeople and you got one person who's super negative. And it's like, this is so hard. There's no leads, there's nothing happen. And other people, sales start going down and you have, what the heck is going, you're trying to elevate. Unfortunately, you have to get rid of the person.
Yeah.
Because this is in business. You can always teach skills, but the attitude is different. It's difficult to change.
Yeah, and if you don't have the tools and you don't have the time and that person doesn't want to do it, it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
So, well, Gus, before we kind of wrap up, thank you for coming and doing this. I'm glad we could finally do this.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on this? We're just kind of scratching the surface of some of the stuff that you do, but is there anything else that we've been talking about that we should highlight for people?
Yes. So I will suggest to people to have a goal.
Okay.
If you don't have a goal, you will always be stuck. Have a goal, but not only have a goal, but fall in love with the goal. The bigger the love, the smaller become the obstacles. I always put it like this. Let's say whoever is here is in love with his wife or girlfriend, and she's stranded in China. She went to China with some friend. She lost her passport. Her friend left. She's alone. And your love for her is so strong that you're willing to let go of your work, sell your car, buy a ticket, and go to get her. It is because you love her so much that any obstacle in between, it becomes so tiny because you just want that person to be back. Or your daughter, or your brother, someone you really love, you were willing to give everything for that person. So if you have a goal and you really love that goal, you will do whatever it takes to get that goal. And so every obstacle in between will be very tiny. And understand that all the results we have in our life, unfortunately, are goals that we put emotion into it. So goals, you could be a positive emotion or negative emotion. If it's negative, it's going to manifest because we put an energy into that. If it's positive, it's going to be the positive because we put an energy into that.
Yeah.
You see, I always say this. You see, the benefit of a person, of your free choice, is you're free to make a choice. But the one thing that every man, some people don't realize, is you have freedom. You have freedom to choose. If you want to go to the beach, you go to the beach. If you want to go to a mountain, you go to a mountain. You have the choice to have the freedom. But when you fall in love with someone in your life, you're willing to give up that freedom to be with that person. Because when you are with your spouse, you're not free to do whatever you want. Now you are two to make the decisions. So if she wants to go to the south and you want to go to the north, you better both or agree to go to the north or to the south, or choose to go to the east, right? Together, right? So we are willing to give our freedom of choice.
Yeah.
Because we love the person. So choose a goal and make that goal a desire. That's the basics, because if you're not succeeding, it's because you're not in love of a goal. And make a goal, you can make a small goal, a big goal. Try to always push yourself higher. So let's say if you're making $100,000, put the goal that in 10 years you're going to make $10 million. Far. So how do I get to there? Well, let's work for the first million. And then let's work for doubling that to 2 millions. But is the journey, what you're learning, the mistakes you're doing in between, who's going to build you to become the person who does that. And just take risks.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Gus, thanks for doing this. And so before we wrap up, where can people get in touch with you? How can they work with you? What's the best way?
So they can reach me in my website. It's called thinkintosuccessacademy.com.
Okay.
They can set up a call with me on my calendar, which is calendly.com/Gustavo/Romero-LP. Or they can call me on my cell phone at 239-586-8255. 580-7288.
Cool. And I'll put all this in the show notes at the bottom so people can just click the show notes and find it. But I'll give you a testimonial on air for this, but I highly recommend, if anybody's listening to this, if you're trying to figure out why you're stuck and how you can get to the next level. If you have a clear path of where you want to go and you want to get to that next level, but you know that your own mind is kind of in the way, it's at least worth an intro call with Gus. It's been invaluable, man. It's really helped me a ton.
Yeah, you grow a lot.
Yeah, thank you. And it's funny too, because even going through the process of having the last business and encountering the failure and dealing with that, on one hand, you can look at it and say, how did this work? Your business failed. This didn't work. But my business was failing anyway. And I think without the way that my thinking has shifted and the perspective has shifted, I think it would have actually been a failure, not just a lesson learned along the way. It would have been more devastating,
But in your case, open doors.
But it opened doors. And if I wasn't thinking or looking for those open doors, it would have been a devastating, oh my God, my life's over. And
because
it helped that.
We have a tendency to focus on the negative.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We got to focus. That's why the goal is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and thanks. And then we'll probably end up doing another one of these again at some point here soon.
I would love to, man. I like these topics a lot. And there's so much to cover. Right?
There's a ton. And that was one of the helpful parts of the course.
And I think so the audience that they listen this, they maybe can contact you and maybe they want to talk specific topics.
Sure.
You know, maybe they want to, hey, I got this situation. I would like to know how to overcome this. We can always work it out.
Yeah, we'll get some feedback. So actually, it's a good point. We've got if you want to get in touch with us, if you want to give us feedback on this, if you want to ask of any other details on what we're talking about here, go to, the link will be in the show notes below, but it's called Pod Inbox. So it's podinbox.com/chineon. Go there. You can leave a voice memo, video, text message there, whatever it is, but ask any questions that you've got. We'll come back and either we'll do another one of these, or if it's one or two, maybe I'll call you up while we're on the podcast and we'll have you answer them or something like that.
It would be nice to have a phone so people can
call in and do all that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, cool.
All right, thank you.
That was awesome.
That was great, man.
What did you think?
Yeah, I like it, man.
Yeah?
I like